All right, Keith, you're on.
Hi, good morning. So welcome to online yoga. We're doing things a little different today. We have the library joining us, and also the uh, the big, which is the Brookline interactive group. They're the local cable people, and they're going to be sharing this so that just in case people who do not have an internet connection, so they can actually watch the program as well. So it'll be pretty much the same as it usually is. So I know Bhatia was going to say something on behalf of the library. Um, I'm going to, you know what, we're informal, so I'm going to let the dog in. So hopefully she doesn't get into any trouble while she's here. She doesn't usually.
When is Big gonna do that?
I'm sorry?
When is Big gonna broadcast that?
You know, I don't know.
Oh.
Do you know, Bhatia?
I can find that out. We're broadcasting live right now. So I know on cable access on, I believe it's channel 3. We are live right now. So we're going to go ahead and start. Welcome everybody. I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Bhatia Blumenthal. I'm the branch supervisor of the Putterham location of the Public Library of Brookline. We are happy to be hosting Keith Beasley for our gentle chair yoga. And we also wanted to thank the Friends of the Brookline Library for funding Keith both in our location and now virtually as well. So before we start, I'm going to share my screen. We're just going to do a little bit of a disclaimer regarding our yoga program. All right, I'm just going to read the disclaimer and then I'll give it back to Keith. So the disclaimer says, participation in this yoga program could result in injury. Not all exercises presented here are for everyone. These exercises are not intended to substitute for proper medical care. Always consult your physician before beginning any exercise program. And the creators, teachers, and producers assume no responsibility for injuries participation in this program. All right. And now it's back to Keith.
Well, let's start out with a sound. We'll just settle in and sit up nice and tall. Just remember to breathe, and we want to feel supported by our chair. I have a bunch of chairs here. I'll talk about that in a minute, but let's just start out with a sound. So we're just going to listen, and feel free to close your eyes if you like. Close your eyes if you like.
Yeah, I want to count on it.
So this is a singing bowl. I think it was made in Nepal. I think that's what I've had it for quite a while. So the reason it's called a singing bowl is you can tap on it and it sounds really nice, but you can also just rub it like this. And it begins to kind of sing. We're going to focus. Our class today is really about Hatha Yoga, which is it's really a physical experience with yoga. It's a combination normally of postures of asanas and of breath work, or in yoga we would call it pranayama. Pranayama. But the other part, or a connected part with that, is the actual sound. And I know that things are, most of us are pretty limited in where we can go currently. We're kind of stuck inside much of the time. And things like sound, especially things like music, I know for myself, make me, they make a big difference. And I know that one of the previous classes that we had that wasn't broadcast. This was before we were today. Somebody had actually mentioned that they were tuning back into the radio and listening to music, and whether that be classical music, but really finding something that calms us down. The news is so difficult these days that we really need that. And I even have heard of people who are picking up instruments that they haven't played in a long time. And that's a really, playing an instrument, even if you don't play it that well, because I play an instrument, I don't play it so well, but it's a nice, it's calming. So we need to find ways to calm ourselves down so that we feel better. So I wanted to talk about, just before we start, one of the key elements in yoga is something in the Sanskrit language, it's called ahimsa. So it's called nonviolence. And that means really being kind to ourselves and to others. And I know right now, it's particularly important for us to remember that, because we can be, things can cause us to be a little bit on edge. So think about ahimsa during the practice today, and how you can be kind to yourself, kind to your body, so that at the end of class you feel really good and you feel positive about what your experience has been today. And a couple of things. So chairs, I put some chairs out just to show you different chairs that you can use. The most important thing is that your chair is sturdy, that it's sturdy and not too spongy when we sit in. So this has a little bit of give to it, but not too much. And this metal chair over here is actually quite hard, but is actually nice. It feels very supportive for me. And then I've used this chair in the past as well. And this has a nice wooden bottom, and it can be kind of hard. So the metal and the wood can be kind of hard on your bottom. So something with a little bit of softness is not bad. If it's too much, if it's too squishy, it's usually when we sit like that for a long time, it can get uncomfortable. So the other choice is, if you have a chair that's really hard, you can take a blanket, or this is actually a towel that I was going to, so you could put a towel on it, or you could even put a blanket to make it a little bit softer. The other thing you can do is, we'd like our knees to be even with the hips, not low like this. So if I was really tall, or if I was really tall, I'm sorry, if I was really short, my knees might be down like this. And if I was really tall, my knees might be up like this, because I have really long legs, but my legs are not long. So I want something that's about even. So knees and hips about even. A nice way to think of it is, if it was to rain inside and the rain got on my legs, the rain would slowly flow off towards the knees. And that makes it easier to extend the spine. So if my knees are too high up, or I'm unsupported and I'm falling forward, it's really hard to be comfortable in the chair. So in yoga, we emphasize, or we think about the 3 curves in the back, which are, so go ahead, and while you're sitting there, see if you can even feel the curves. If you take your hand, this one goes in at the bottom, it goes out between the shoulder blades, and it goes in up at the neck. So we want to be able to have those curves. That's what the natural shape of the spine is, with those curves. When we change those curves too much, the vertebrae do not sit evenly on top of each other. And that can create problems with compression of the discs. So let's sit up nice and tall, and we'll take a few breaths in with the hands resting somewhere on the legs or the knees. Feeling the belly going in and out. And you're always welcome to rest your hand right on the navel, right on the belly button. And you'll be able to feel the belly going in and out with the breath. I'll turn sideways so you can see. And notice when I breathe in, the belly gets a little bigger, but also the heart area gets a little bigger. And I get a little more rounding in the back. And then when I exhale, it goes back a little bit. But I'm not over rounding. I'm not doing this, and I'm not doing this, because it's really uncomfortable to do that. So those movements aren't really natural movements for the body. And we always want to stay with movements that feel natural and aren't forced, especially in yoga. We talk a lot in yoga about balancing ease and effort. So I'm going to rest my hands on the knees, and I'm going to take a breath in and feel the heart lifting. So my heart is right inside here. I want to feel it lifting when I inhale, and then when I exhale, my heart goes back. So you can even, if you want, you can rest your hand right on find the sternum right in the middle of the chest. And the heart's right underneath there. And inhale and lift. And you might notice as you do this that the pelvis is actually rocking in unison with the heart going back and forth. So we get a little bit of pelvic tilting. I'll turn sideways so you can see. So when I inhale, I'm lifting up. I'm extending the spine. And then when I exhale, there's a little bit of rounding around where the chest is and the upper back. So I'm going to go back and forth like this. You might even notice the chin likes to go up and down a little bit. Always being careful not to drop the head backwards. Please don't do this. It's really hard on the back of the neck. So we never want to do that. Although if you want, you can let your chin come down a fair amount. The chin sort of naturally and easily can come down in the front. And then we'll add a little movement with the arms. So let's take a breath in. And as I breathe in, I lift my hands up. And then I let them float out as I'm exhaling. So the exhalation, the arms are floating down. And then the palms come together right in front of the belly. And then I'm going to begin again. I'm going to inhale and come up and around. You have some choices here with how big the circles are. So if you get any discomfort in the shoulders, then please make your circles smaller. So you notice that the movement is pretty similar. I'm getting nice range of motion in the shoulders, even with small circles. You don't have to reach way up to get good benefit. And then we're going to go back the other way. So we're going to pause right in the front and just pause for a moment and spread the fingers apart like this without straining the hands though. And what that means is that I'm spreading the fingers without over efforting. So maybe 30 or 40% effort. I'm not spreading them. I'm not working so hard that everything is tense. So right now, my whole hands, I don't know if you can see them, but my hands feel really stiff. So I don't want that. I want my hands to open, but still be soft. Still be soft. So we're balancing that ease and effort. We're not over efforting. And then we're going to exhale and the hands float down. And then I turn the palms up and then the palms come up and come together and then down. So I'm inhaling, palms up, arms up, and exhaling, softening, letting the hands come down. And you might find the chin lifts up a little bit as the hands come up and then goes down as the hands go down. You're always welcome once you know what you're doing, once you feel what you're doing, or once you can see what you're doing with the eyes open, to close the eyes. And that helps to bring our attention internal so that we're not as interrupted by our vision or the things outside of us. We call that pratyahara. It's a Sanskrit term. It means withdrawal of the senses or internalizing the senses. And then we're going to pause and to come back in the middle. And then go ahead and press the hands together and see if you can turn my hand like this. See if you can line everything up nice and evenly so that everything looks so it's a mirror image. And then feel where the hands are touching each other and see if you can make them feel uniform so that the two hands together like this start to feel like there's one hand. You can't tell where one hand ends and the other one begins. Keeping the shoulders relaxed here. You can even lower the fingers down. So this is just a matter of finding where is it comfortable for me to have my hands like this. And then we'll take a few breaths like this. We call this our cactus breathing. We look like a saguaro cactus, or you can look like a saguaro cactus if you hold your arms out like this. And we're doing it with this sort of little sweeping motion with the arms. The arms are floating out and then coming back softly. So there's a little sweeping. And even though my arms are sweeping out, it's a sort of a gentle opening in the front. And it's the same, if I turn sideways again, it's the same process that we had with the heart opening, but now we can facilitate that opening with the arms. You can also, depending on your shoulders, you can also work further down. You can actually work anywhere between the elbows being even with the shoulders. Don't bring them higher than the shoulders, but if this bothers your shoulders, lower the elbows down a little. You can even work down here. You can even work down all the way down at the waist like this. So you'll notice that my heart is still opening here. I'm still lifting my chest. So I'm getting a little external rotation in the shoulders, and it's a little easier on my shoulders. So we try to find a spot somewhere in between here and down here that it's comfortable for the shoulders. And also the neck. There's a lot of back and forth between the neck and the shoulders. They highly influence each other. So sometimes when we have neck issues, it hurts our shoulder and vice versa. So we want to keep these areas soft as we open and close. And then we're going to add a little hug to it. So we're going to, as we exhale, we're going to just wrap the hands like this. So you could wrap around the elbows like this. You could wrap the triceps like this, or you can even wrap further around, reaching back where the shoulder blades are. Just being mindful that we don't want to overdo it. So I'm doing it with the breath. I'm inhaling, and then as I exhale, I wrap. And then I inhale, and think about feeling some gracefulness here. Feeling gracefulness. And try alternating which arm is on top. So sometimes we have a preferred arm. I kind of like my right arm on top. It feels better. So this arm, and then try your left arm. Try the opposite arm like this. And then this time we're going to just bring our hand, we're going to start to wrap ourselves. We've exhaled, and we're going to pause here and take a breath. Remember to keep breathing. And then the next time you inhale, after you exhale, inhale and let the arms come apart. So we're going to wrap ourselves and pause there for one breath. So really concentrate. We're exhaling, we wrap ourselves, and then we take a breath in this position. And one more time, switching the opposite arm on top this time. And then release the hands down. Let's roll the shoulders. And then back the other way. So we're going to warm up. Actually, let's warm up a little bit. I don't know how cold or warm it is in your house, but you can regulate your temperature. I usually have a scarf here. So this time of year, it can still be cold, and ways to regulate your temperature are a scarf is a nice way to keep the heat in. We lose a lot of heat from the neck, and the same thing with the head. Some sort of a hat is a great way. And then the nice thing about this is if I start to, let's move the feet like this. Let's lift the knees up like this. So as I start to warm up a little bit, as I'm exercising and I start to warm up, I can take some of these things off to cool myself down, and I can easily put them back on. So we regulate our temperature that way. It's also good, always good to have a little water, especially if it's still kind of dry. Just even get a little sip of water before your mouth gets too dry, and it can cause us to cough if we get too dry. And so I'm going to start out with just lifting one knee up, kind of like marching. And actually, we can even, let's add the arms to it. So this is a nice way to warm up. If you, so with this class, this is a chair class. You have an option if you want. You can stand up during portions of the class. And I'll try to remind you when you can do that. So one isn't better than the other. Sitting or standing isn't better. It can be nice, though, to switch the position a little bit, because sometimes that helps us be a little more, the back feels better. The back really appreciates it when we change our position, even if it's changing our position in the chair, so that we're not always sitting with the back of the chair in this exactly same place in our back. So if you want to, you're welcome to stand up and march in place this way. So it's really kind of your choice. If you're concerned at all about balance, you can always have two chairs, one to sit in and then one in front like this, and you can have your fingers resting on the chair. So yoga in many ways is about experimentation. It's about individual. Traditionally, yoga was always taught on a one-on-one basis. There were no group classes. And that was because everybody was really different. And so teachers would teach students based on what the students' needs were. So if you notice that as you start to lift the knees up, the higher you lift the knees up, the harder it is. So you may want to regulate. You may just want to lift them up, the feet just up a little bit. You'll notice that the abdomen here is working, the core muscles here. In order to lift the feet up, the core muscles have to work, the quadriceps have to work, the hip flexors have to work. And it's nice to add the arms. And you can get a little bit of just turning like this. If you have arms on the chairs, you want to be careful. Please don't bump your elbows into the arms. Remember, we're practicing ahimsa in our class today, nonviolence. You want to be very careful. And if you're standing, it's the same thing. It's the same thing like this. And then whether you're sitting or standing, let's go ahead and gently turn, bringing the elbows back on one side and then on the other. So this is a gentle twisting. We'd like to be feeling the movement happening down here in the belly. So almost like a diagonal movement across from the hip up to the opposite shoulder. So you could even think of it that way, moving the shoulder back and then feeling this lengthening along this diagonal path and then going on the other side. So these turning movements are really, really good for digestion and elimination. Really good because they're gently pressing on the intestines and the internal organs there. And then we'll come back and we'll sit up nice and tall. I'm going to do a little, so you should be a little warmer from that, hopefully. That was the idea anyway, to warm up a little bit. And let's take a couple of breaths. Actually, let's do a couple cactus breaths. Inhale. So wherever your arms are, whether or not they're down, whether or not they're higher up, doesn't matter. Find what feels comfortable for you. And exhale. You can even give a little sigh as you exhale. So sighing is one of the bodies, one of our ways to relieve tension. So relieving tension. I also just read somewhere that it can be nice to put your hand on your heart, right on your heart. I guess there's nerve endings or something in the hand and the heart. I just read this today. I have to look a little further into it. But just resting our hand on our heart, feeling our heart beating underneath, can be very calming because the heart's a very rhythmical. I guess this invokes the parasympathetic nervous system. And that's the part of the nervous system that calms us down. It's the opposite of the fight and flight response. And we're going to work on all the joints now. So again, feel free to stand if you want. You're always welcome to stand. You're also welcome to change your position to maybe stand for a minute or two and then sit back down so that you're not always in the same spot. But remember, if you're standing, if you decide to stand up, please make sure it's safe to do. I'm going to open and close the hands. We talked before about balancing ease and effort. So I am spreading my fingers apart, but there is that softness that comes. Imagine your fingers are maybe even like a flower. There's so many flowers that are blooming now. It's really nice. And then we'll spin the wrists around. Notice the elbows are right by my sides. So when I have my elbows in, I'm not really pulling them in, but they're hanging down. And this helps to, my shoulders don't have to do much work, so I can keep my shoulders relaxed, even though my hands are up. So when we're doing these exercises, we're really working on focusing the effort and the movement in a particular part of the body so that the other parts of the body, like the shoulders or the jaw, stay relaxed. You can still think about extending the spine up. So we want to have nice axial extension in the body. And then we'll go ahead and rest the hands with the palms up and then touch the shoulders. So this is for the elbows. And if that feels okay, you can begin to lift the elbows up. And notice now my hands are starting to get a little higher on my shoulders. At some point, your shoulders might say that's enough. So please don't go any higher. And then we're going to go back down. And then we'll roll the shoulders. And then back the other way. We're going to do our necks, the neck next. So remember it has the smallest vertebra, so we want to be careful and be very gentle with our neck. So we'll go ahead and we'll start out, we'll turn to one side and then to the other. And if you imagine like a conductor would move their hand back and forth, it's a nice way to follow with the head. Notice it's nice and slow. Nice and slow back and forth. And let's go ahead and circle up and around. Circling up and around. Here you can decide how big your circles are. You're welcome. If you want to make bigger circles, you can. But if that hurts your neck or your shoulders, please stop. And then we'll lower that hand down and we'll swing the other hand back and forth. You can even, if you want to make a little bigger dip down in the front, the gaze will come down further the more you dip down. So I'm really following my hand with my gaze. Following my hand. This is a good way to encourage concentration of the mind. Concentration. And then we're going to go ahead and circle around. So I think we were going, I think this is the opposite direction. I didn't actually tell you which way to go before. So if you can, try to go the opposite direction with this hand. And I'm still following my hand around with the head. So my eyes aren't moving too much in my head. It's more my head is moving around. And then I'm going to come back to the center and I'm going to start to just circle my hand around. And then I'm going to circle my finger around like this. And then circle the finger the opposite way. So notice at this point, my arm isn't really moving. It's just the finger. And then I'm going to start to move my wrist and the finger. And then I'm going to start to move my elbow in my whole hand. And then I'm going to go back to the swinging the arm around. And let's bring that hand down. Let's do the opposite side now, starting with the finger. So notice everything here is relaxed. My arm is relaxed, my elbow, just holding my finger out. I'm going to circle my finger. And you might find one is easier to do than the other. Usually if you're right-handed, it's easier to, and then I'm going to start to make the circles a little bigger by adding the wrists. Notice the elbow is really not moving very much. So it's the finger and the wrist. And now I'm going to start to move the elbow. And the shoulder is not moving very much. It kind of stays in the same spot. And then I'm going to move the shoulder, the elbow, the wrist, and the fingers around. So this is another example of we're really focusing in on one spot at a time. So we're engaging the mind with a very specific muscular pattern. And let's take a couple of breaths. Inhale and give ourselves a little hug again. Inhale. Oh, and so if you're standing, feel free to sit down. And if you're sitting down and you're okay about standing, your balance is okay, feel free to stand up. So just changing our position can be really nice. And then we're going to, so if you're standing, please go ahead and sit down, walk the feet out a little bit, and come towards the edge of the chair. So it's a little bit like this. So notice that I'm away from the back of the chair. And just a little, I brought a couple of things to show you that you can try while you practice. In yoga, we often use blocks, but you don't have to use a block. A block is really just a prop. I mean, blocks haven't really been around that long. People used to have wooden blocks, these big wooden blocks. But if you want to use something like a towel, sometimes putting something, say, between the legs can help to stabilize the knees. And also it starts to work the inner thigh muscles. So that little bit of just holding, or so I'm not squeezing too hard. I'm just squeezing hard enough so the towel doesn't fall down. And the same thing if you have a yoga block, or you have a blanket, or even a pillow from your couch. And you can make it a little wider by folding it in half. And so this is a nice way to engage these inner thighs, especially when we do some of the sitting exercises. So I'm going to use this pillow, and I'm going to start to lean forward And then I'm going to come back up. And as I lean forward, I'm gently squeezing the pillow, and I'm also pressing my feet into the floor. So remember, you don't have to use a pillow, but you can try it and see. And if you don't have one this time, you can bring one next time. Or a rolled up towel. This actually is, I think this is a bath mat with a couple of rubber bands on it. So you could even use string if you wanted. And we're going to come forward like this. And then I'm going to press my feet down into the floor as I come back up. So I'm thinking about pushing my feet down as I come back up without rounding my back. So I'll turn sideways. So this movement, the movement is really coming, the bending is coming from the waist, and my back rounds a little bit, but I try to keep it relatively straight. So I'm not doing this. And what happens when I do this is all the vertebra down here in the lumbar spine, the front part of the vertebra gets squashed and the back part opens. And we don't really want that. It's not good for our back. So I'm coming forward, folding really at the hips. So if you want to, you also can, if you take your fingertips like this, and you take your fingertips and you find your front hip bones. So if you come up the thigh to where your torso is, you have to sort of dig around, find those bony hip bones, put your fingers there, and then lean forward so that the belly is starting to touch the hands. Making sure I'm not rounding my back and pressing the feet down. So I exhale, and then I'm going to inhale as I press my feet and come back up. If you find this is difficult or it bothers your back, rest your hands out here and use your arms to help push you up. Use your arms to help push you up. This can even be almost like a little bit like a push-up. So your arms get a little exercise here as well. I'm going to come forward and then come back up. And then come back like this. And let's finish our neck. So sitting up nice and tall, we're going to exhale and let the chin come down. We inhale up, exhale down, and inhale up, exhale down. Keeping the jaw very soft. So the jaw and even the tongue and the throat here in the front, we want to make sure we keep the throat soft so it feels, even when we release the chin down, it doesn't feel congested. It doesn't feel squashed. Remember that we don't drop the head backwards. Really, really hard on the back of the neck. Please don't do that. And then we come back up, and then we're going to tip the head from side to side. So we want to go nice and slow here. Nice and slow. It's to give the inner ear a chance to adjust as we lean the head. And I'm not forcing the head over. The head weighs about 11, 12. I think some heads even weigh like 15 pounds. It's pretty heavy, like a bowling ball. So just leaning over a little bit, the weight of the head now stretches the side of the neck here. You can even make a pillow with your hands. I like doing this. And you take the pillow and you can rest the ear right on the shoulder with the pillow as support. And then I can go to the opposite side. I'm still sitting up tall here. So if you're starting to get, sometimes we get tired. I haven't been using the back of the chair so much, so maybe it's a good time to make sure I feel supported in the back of the chair. And then leaning one side and then the other. Remembering to keep breathing. So even though this seems like a very simple kind of exercise that we're doing, this just releasing, relaxing the neck up here, we're doing it in conjunction with the breath. So we can inhale up and exhale down, and inhale up and exhale down, and one more, inhale up and exhale down. Now let's come back up, and we'll roll the shoulders. And let's go down to the feet. So I have my feet on the floor, and I'm going to, let's lift both feet up and circle the ankles around. So my feet are just barely off the floor, and I'm going to go the other way. And let's add the wrists to it. So we circled the wrists before, and now we're going to do them in unison. So notice that as the feet are circling around, my fingers and toes are pointing in about the same direction. So my toes are pointing in, my fingers are coming in, and vice versa. And I'm going to slow it down a little bit. It is helpful to look and see what's happening. And if you get the hang of that, if it feels like you can sort of feel the movement of the hands and the feet, you can try closing the eyes and see if you can still keep them in unison. So now we have to feel where they are in space. We call that proprioception. We're going to go back the other way now. So it's nice to start out looking and then making sure they're nice and even and in sync. And then if you feel comfortable, you can try closing the eyes. And usually it's harder. It's definitely harder to close the eyes and do it. And then we're going to rest the hands and the feet. And let's rock the feet. Actually, first let's lift and spread the toes. Lift and spread the toes. I'll take off a sock so you can see. But if you know how to do that, please go ahead. So I'm lifting and spreading the toes out. And then I relax them back down. I lift and spread and relax. Lift and spread, relax. This is really good, especially since we often spend so much time with our shoes on and our toes get kind of squashed together. So it's nice. So if you're around the house and you can wear like slippers, or, the best thing to do is really go barefooted, but it's kind of cold for that. And it might even be slippery. So be careful if you do go barefooted. And let's rock the feet. But feet are much happier, if the weather's warm anyway. Feet are very happy to not be in shoes. So I'm rocking, lifting the balls of the feet up, and then lifting the heels up. And this might be a place where if you have a block or a towel or something, or you can even, actually, you can do this. You can put your fists together like this, right between the thighs, and you can gently squeeze the two knees together. And I'm not squeezing hard. I'm just squeezing a little bit. Maybe 20, 30, 40% effort, no more than 40% effort. And this helps to keep the knees nice and straight and stable as I'm rocking the feet. And now let's add, so you can bring your hands back up, let's swing the fingers and the wrists back and forth with the feet. So just like we were circling before, we were doing this circling like this together, we're going to do this rocking back and forth together, so that when I get to the end point, when my toes are lifted all the way up, my hands are all the way out. And then when I lift my heels up, my hands are back. So even though the distance, my hands are traveling a little further than my feet are rocking, just because my hands, there's more movement going on. I do the timing so that they get to the end on one side and then to the other at the same time. And this becomes really like a meditation. And you could even change it so that if the heels are lifting up, the fingers are going out. And then the toes are lifting up, the fingers are coming back. Or you could do the opposite. You could do the heels are lifting up and the fingers are coming back. And then the toes are lifting up and the fingers are going out. So you can really do it either way. Whatever you feel, whatever you like. You can even try it one way and then the next time do it a different way. And then you can even add a little bit of, see if you can add a little bit of movement to it. Close the eyes and see if you can get a little bit more that feeling of gracefulness. Humans we're graceful by nature. We're born that way. So see if you can feel some gracefulness. And then we'll go ahead and lower the hands down. And we'll go ahead and pat one knee and then lift that knee up. So notice that foot's lifted up, and then I'm going to swing the foot. So it's really like a pendulum. So when I lift my knee up, I have the muscles in the top of the leg and the belly here working. And I want to make sure I'm still sitting up tall. So let's bring our foot down. So you'll notice that when we lift our foot up, it's harder to maintain our extension in the spine because we don't have as much support. We take a foot away and now our weight wants to move to this side, and it's harder. Our back muscles, our belly muscles have to work harder. So let's even try this. Try resting your hands right on your belly like this. And when you lift your foot up, think about feeling the engagement of the abdomen. So what that means is that the belly button is right here. The belly button might go back a little bit. You might feel the contraction here means the belly button goes back. I'm not really sucking my belly in as much as it goes back just a little bit. The contraction, the energizing these muscles moves, they shorten and they move back. And so I'm going to go back and forth like that. So see if you notice the belly tightening as you're lifting the knees up, back and forth. So that's what we want to feel. When the belly can engage, it helps support the back. And especially sitting in chairs so much. And now let's go back. Let's try that again. We're going to pat the knee again, lift it up, and then swing the knee and see if by engaging the belly a little bit, you can keep the spine a little more lifted. So we have this good feeling about our posture. Better posture. We feel better. And there's a direct link between how we feel, our posture influences how we feel and vice versa. And let's do the other side. So we'll pat the other knee. So we just pat the knee to remind us to lift the knee up, this is what we want to move. And I like to do that a lot. We will pat various parts of the body, and that'll be the place that we want to bring our attention, our focus to. And then sit up nice and tall. Remember, we're sitting up tall. And then go ahead and lower back down. And then we're going to lean from one side to the other. So just start by feeling the weight shifting. So you're welcome, if you want, you can always use the side of the chair. Sometimes, depending on if you have arms, so if you have arms on the chair, you can hold the arms of the chair. If you don't have arms, you can hold the side of the chair. I've even seen people, sometimes they'll actually hold the front leg on the chair. We just don't want to, we want to stay stable in the chair. And at the same time, we're shifting our weight. So you can even lift the opposite foot up, almost like a sailboat. Actually, let's try it like this even. So bring your hands up like this. And so as I lean over, notice that my body is still relatively straight. I'm not curving over like this. I'm staying relatively straight. My arms are just sort of reminding me to stay straight. So we want to stay straight, And then if you want, remember, you can use your hands for support. And you'll start to feel this in the belly. This is working in the belly, back and forth. And we'll come up and we'll slide forward in the chair. So we're going to make some circles with the shoulders. So sitting up nice and tall, and the feet are about hip width apart or maybe a little wider. So we want a wide stance. The triangle is a really good stance. So we create a triangle with our 2 feet on the floor here and then the buttocks in the chair. So we have our 3 sides. One, so it's 1, 2, and then the third is between the feet. And we're going to sit up tall and start to circle the shoulders around. So as the shoulders are going around, I'm leaning a little bit forward and side and back and side. Still sitting up. So sometimes when I start to lean too much, I have trouble keeping the spine extended. So if you can't feel that extension in the spine, don't lean so much. Let's go the other way. If you want more, you want it to be harder, you can make the circles bigger and you can go slower. And you'll notice that as you go slowly, especially if you're leaning back, the belly muscles really have to keep us from falling back in the chair. And the same thing forward. We don't want to fall out of the chair. So the muscles on the opposite side keep us in place, keep us in the chair. And if you want to make bigger circles, it's good to widen your stance a lot, so you have a wider base. Think about looking out across the room a little bit. So if you have like a window across the room, or something that's maybe 3 feet off the floor, don't look down like this. When we look down, the back starts to round, the neck starts to round. We want to look, and we don't want to look way up either, because then the back of the neck gets compressed. So we look out. And actually, if this is too easy, you can also use the hands like this. I think we've even done some stirring. If it was, we could still make soup. Imagine you have a big pot of soup in front of you like this, and you're stirring the soup. And let's go back the other way. We're going to stir the soup around like this. And we're going to sit up nice and tall. So we're going to stand up for a moment, or you can potentially do these seated as well. So I'm going to show it standing first. So we will use our chair. So our chair will be our support. It helps with balance. And not that I'm leaning on my chair. This chair is a little short, so I'm going to switch chairs actually, because it's easier. So whenever we have the ability to touch something, it gives our system of balance information, whether it's a wall or a chair, or there's a desk over here. All those things help us with knowing where our body is in space. So just by touching the chair, I'm not leaning against the chair. I'm not using it like a cane. But so I'm resting my fingers here, and then I'm going to take a little step back like this. And then I'm going to bring my foot back. So I'm going to go back and forth like this with my foot. Almost like so actually try this. So if you have a room underneath the front of the chair, and underneath the back of the chair, step the foot forward as if you're going to take a step forward, but don't actually step forward. So most of my weight is staying on this this leg back here. So my right leg is stepping back and forth. And when I step back, notice that my hips are staying in about the same spot. They're not really moving, but now the curve is back here. So the curve in is back here, and when I step forward, my curve is in the front. And this curve back here is really important because it starts to open up the front of the where the groin is, where the top of the thigh meets the torso. And that helps to counteract sitting. And let's switch legs. So just come back to a nice standing, and just normal standing. And I've got my fingers resting, and then I'm going to step back and forward. So I'm going to go forward and back. So most of my weight is on that standing leg. Just a little bit when my toes touch down in the front, and then my toes touch down in the back. You can also notice, and come back, let's do the other leg. You'll notice that when you step back like this, if you press the heel down a little bit, the gluteal muscles in the butt contract. And when we step forward, they actually relax. So we want to get a little contraction in the glutes right here, and then we step forward and relax. We're going to go back and forth like that. And let's switch sides. I want to go slowly enough so that I can pause for a moment and get that contraction in the butt. So if you have doubts about your contraction back here, take your hand, and as your foot's back here and you gently press the heel down, tap it and see if it's firmed up. That's the idea. The idea is to firm these gluteal muscles. And when these muscles contract here, it actually opens the muscles in the front here. They're antagonistic muscles, and we can talk more about that another time. But muscles that are antagonists, that are opposite, when you contract one, the other one relaxes. It's an anatomical feature that we come with. And then we'll come back, and we're going to do a balance pose today called crane. And you're welcome to rest your fingers on the chair, and we will go ahead and we will lift the knee up, and then we'll put it back down. And then we're going to do the other side. Think about, as you lift the knee up, think about the opposite leg pressing down into the floor. So my weight is now on this leg, and then I'm going to come back down. And depending on how your leg feels and how your balance is, you may only want to go up for a moment, and you may only want to lift the knee up a little bit. So if you're at all tentative about your balance, or your legs feel they don't feel great today, they feel weak, then just lift up a little bit. And you might want to rely a little more on your chair. So you're always welcome, remember, to stand with the chair. And if you need support, you can always hold on to the chair. But I'll move the chair so you can see. And if you feel like your balance is good and your legs are strong today, you can take longer. You can even come up and wait there for a moment, a couple of breaths, and then come back down. And breath counting is a nice way to make sure we do it evenly on each side. So I can come up, take a breath, and then exhale, come back down. And then come up and breathe in. And then exhale, come back down. And remember, you don't have to use the chair. You can also stand, if you have a wall, it can be handy to stand with a wall behind you. You can rest your fingertips on the wall. It's another way, because remember, we can get our balance information can come from even just touching the wall. It's easier to balance if we have something that we can touch. And then we're going to sit back down. So we're going to find a comfortable position. We're going to come into a relaxation pose. We're going to do a little bit of breathing. So if the back of the chair is hard, you're welcome to throw a blanket over it or put a cushion behind you. That can be nice too, a cushion or anything to make it more comfortable, or as comfortable as you can be. As comfortable as you can be. So when we relax, it doesn't really matter the chair. We need to feel like we can get comfortable in the chair. And you could even lay down if you wanted. If you had something that you felt like was supportive, you could lay down. You can do the nice thing about the virtual class is you can do whatever you want at home, but I'll teach it sitting up, at least today. And you can think about if in the future you want to take, we call this post-shavasana or final relaxation. If you want to take it laying down, you could figure out how to do that. But the most important thing is to be comfortable. So we find a spot for our hands, and we're going to take a few breaths here. We started off talking about the breath, and we're going to complete the class today with a little bit of breath work. The breath is really our connection between the body and the nervous system. By controlling the breath, by relaxing the breath, the body relaxes. And vice versa. When the body gets excited, the breath gets excited, and we breathe harder and faster. And when we want to relax, or when we're relaxing, the breath slows down. And the nervous system quiets. I'm feeling myself supported by the chair. In the back, on the buttocks, the feet underneath. I'm relaxing the shoulders, relaxing the arms and the hands, and softening the face and the eyes, releasing the jaw and the tongue and the throat. Relaxing the back of the body, the shoulder blades, the middle back, the lower back, and the chest and heart, and the belly soften on the front of the body, and the hips, and the buttocks. The whole pelvic area relaxes. The legs soften, the thighs, knees, shins and calves. Release the ankles, soften the feet, and relax the toes. Each time we breathe in, we feel a little lightness in the body, in the spine. And each time we exhale, you feel a grounding, a connection with the earth underneath the feet, underneath the buttocks, and a softening of the body, a releasing, a relaxing, a letting go. We'll pause here for we'll continue with just breathing, relaxing, and if you can, allow the eyes to close if you haven't already. And we'll stay here for about a minute until you hear the sound of the bell. Just thinking about the breath, feeling the breath, and allowing the body to soften each time you exhale. Body relaxes a little bit more, go a little deeper into our relaxation each time we exhale. So we'll start now for about a minute of silent meditation. So namaste, and thank you all for practicing today. And I don't know if anybody has any questions. So we can open it up to questions, Bhatia, for a couple of minutes, if that's okay.
I'm just going to say thank you, Keith. I took a lot of notes, and if I have questions, I'll send them to you through email.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any questions, comments?
Thank you, Keith. No, just thank you.
You're welcome. And everybody has my email address, so if you want to ask questions privately, you can always send me an email. Okay. So, and did that work out okay for everybody as far as the? I don't think it didn't seem like it made a big difference, Bhatia. I don't know if. I mean, it was the same. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say it was fine. The feed looked great on my end.
Oh, great. Okay. Just so everybody knows, so we will do the class on Tuesday, but it won't be broadcast. It'll just be the normal Tuesday class, and the only class that'll be done through the library officially will be Friday. Okay. So if you do want to come to an invitation to the Tuesday class, just send me an email, and I'll send you the invitation, because it'll be a different invitation, and we'll probably do a reoccurring meeting thing. I think, Bhatia, I think that's what you said you would do.
Yeah, we'll set it up
for Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Keith, if we've been doing the class on Tuesday, do we still need to email you?
No, if you've been getting the invitations and you're already on whatever lists I have, so
okay,
you should be okay.
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 Well, thank you.
Well, thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too. Well,
have a great weekend.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.